A revolution is upon us, between those who have suffered under the serfdom of the shogunate, and the shogun backed by his samurai. Our side will not be that of the isolationist and power-hungry shogun, but the side of the people of Japan. Led by the fearless leader of our revolution who wants to establish a presidential republic, but for the time being has autocratic power throughout the revolution. He is reckless and a jingoist. He wants to spread Japanese power throughout the world with colonization, and he wishes to change the economy from the traditionalism of old to agrarianism, and to provide some assistance to the newly freed serfs to find work through poor laws. And just as war breaks out between the shogun and the revolutionary, a war is breaking out between the safety of our familiar customs and our ambitions for more, these ambitions which guide us headlong into the unknown. But as quickly as the war broke out, it is over. The shogun is disposed, and we rid ourselves of the self-centered isolationism of old and bring in a new presidential system of governance to rule over the growing might of Japan. The president is guided by the industrialist and the petite bourgeoisie, and they work together to end the policy of isolationism which has plagued us to being nothing more than a second-rate backwards nation in comparison to the Western colonial powers. This petition to enact protectionism over isolationism succeeds, but it becomes immediately clear that we need to ensure that the shogunate is unable to regain control over Japan. So we remove the hereditary transfer of local political offices and instead make them appointed positions. With this end of these old policies, we now aim to establish the first company of our nation to compete on the global market, representative of our new aim to usher in an era of unprecedented growth. So we establish a steel syndicate to meet our soon emergent constructural demands. As we bring upon this industrial transformation, and rid ourselves of hereditary bureaucrats, our emphasis on literacy has taken a backseat to our new goals. So in order to mediate our decaying educational status, we petition for public schooling. We continue to invent new methods and means to increase our economic growth, and in doing so we change the nation's focus from that violent revolution not too long ago, and even the previous supporters of the shogunate changed their political stance to fit with this new trajectory. And then, with public schooling enacted, and raising the educational focus throughout the country, we must be able to also meet our fiscal demands, to be able to fund the expenditures incumbent upon growing the economy through the implementation of a new per capita tax. This new era, although it is a much-needed change from the iron grip of the shogun, is far from peaceful. In fact, the militaristic sentiment inside Japan has done nothing but grow. So not only do we petition to transition from an agrarian to interventionist economic system, but we also declare our ambitions to bring the entire Pacific under a soon-to-be Japanese empire. Of course, such military ambitions need to be supported by accompanying economic improvements, and we make the transition from iron-framed buildings to new modern Western steel-frame buildings, which serve to multiply our ability to grow our economy. To begin our conquest of the Pacific, we first start by petitioning for the policy of colonial exploitation to help support the Japanese war machine. This newfound ambition and desire to expand aligns with the interest of some other great powers of the world, and accordingly both France and the United States offer us trade agreements, beginning to cement a budding relationship between our nations. The new policy of colonial exploitation has proved to be unpopular with the commoners, who worry that we will bring unnecessary war and death to the Japanese people. But a deal is struck, not for the reduction of our professional army to being, as the commoners want, a national guard, but to speed up the process of fulfilling the aim of our revolution to make the presidency democratically elected by the landowners of Japan. In all of this, the people rejoice at their newfound wealth and comfort brought on by this globalization, and with the enactment of landed voting, we usher in a new, but continuously changing and reliably consistent form of government. Regardless, the large majority of Japanese political parties wish to extend the military might of Japan. Soon, new sorts of technologies begin to be introduced and invented in Japan, and now the streets in some of the larger cities are illuminated with electricity rather than by whale oil. This new great convenience should be brought across the islands of Japan, and orders are placed to construct power plants in each province. Along with this, the industrialists wish to further the economic liberalism of the nation and push for laissez-faire capitalistic policies. Unfortunately for them, the opposition to this new radical economic theory is too great. But one shut door on this single policy need not mean there is not plenty of money to be made across the Pacific. So we begin a diplomatic play in order to bring the independent nation of Hawaii under Japanese control, so that we may exploit their more tropical climate for resources. And once we begin this play, we notice that there's little to no global opposition to the creation of a Japanese-controlled Hawaii, and we push further to take a treaty port to help base the growing navy. When war breaks out, our soldiers and sailors prepare to navally invade the Hawaiian Islands and find little to no resistance. They quickly occupy the entire archipelago, the Hawaiians surrender, and then comply with Japanese demands. Next, we use our prowess at construction to draw up plans and survey an area of land suitable for a skyscraper. With all of this growth, however, the Japanese people demand some national policies to ensure the health of its now wealthier than ever citizens, so the government gets started on writing policy for a privatized healthcare system. Next on the chopping block for the Japanese imperial ambitions is the nation of Brunei, who offer a strategic location in the so-called East Indies. So, we begin a diplomatic play to both make Brunei a tributary nation to Japan, and to get easier access to the area by taking a treaty port. But, before our soldiers could even see action on Brunei soil, they yield to us our war goals, and avoid bloodshed and their certain defeat to the might of the Japanese Navy and Army. Now, however, our ambitions are growing. It's not enough to conquer third-rate nations of the world. Instead, we set our sights to eventually claim Manchuria from the Qing. And just as our policy of private health insurance is enacted across Japan, we also identify an appropriate location for our skyscraper and begin construction on the monumentous symbol of Japanese success. In this outstanding upward trajectory of Japan, the United States offers us a defensive pact, which we gladly accept to solidify our diplomatic relationship with our ally across the Pacific. And we now usher in a new government led by the industrialist and the more conservative party of Japan. Amidst all these local changes, we astound the world by completing the construction of a skyscraper from the world's best Japanese steel. But all is not quiet on the home front, and there are new revolutionary ideas being brought across the world. And our tributary, Hawaii, is trying to overthrow their current government in favor of a communistic regime. This being obviously against our interests forces us to intervene and put down this revolt. However, the communistic threat strikes fear into the heart of the Japanese, who begin an era known as the Japanese Red Scare. But this is quenched, in part, by easily putting down the Hawaiian threat. And in true capitalistic ambition, we fund a metalworks to benefit the Japanese military-industrial complex. This prompts Britain to offer us a trade agreement, to benefit from our increasing contributions to the global marketplace. Soon, however, we find ourselves at the end of this Japanese era of mitigated expansion, and emerge into a full-fledged militaristic conquering of the greater Pacific area. To set this process into motion, to present a true test to the military power of Japan, we must claim Manchuria from the Qing. We find our opportunity as the Qing are drawn into a military conflict with the British, and accordingly we begin our diplomatic play for Manchuria. Unfortunately for us, the Germans oppose us. But this encourages the French to back our claims to Manchuria, which will keep the Germans preoccupied in Europe while we take on the weakening Qing. And as the war kicks off, we navally invade the mainland and crush all resistance in our way. We take no step back, we offer no surrender, we crush both the Qing and the German forces until they are in a position to do nothing but submit to our war goals, and to allow us to take Outer Manchuria. With this victory, we find ourselves at the natural conclusion of an era, where the emergent Japanese have turned into a global military power, and it's now a foregone conclusion that Japan will go on to have further militaristic successes, backed by our powerful economy. And so, I wish you farewell, Until we embark on another journey, goodbye.